Good day, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm Sean, and we are here in Kingston, Ontario once again, because that's what I like to do, walk around and talk about things I see in Kingston. And you're probably well aware that it is October, which means Halloween season. So, in keeping with the spirit of the holiday, I thought that we would go to one of Kingston's more spooky locales, which brings us to where we are right now. Here in McBurney Park in downtown Kingston, Ontario, known to the locals as Skeleton Park. And why, you might ask, would such a lovely park have such a sinister nickname? It's because this place has a secret. Below the playground, the gardens, the ball diamond, the leafy landscaping, lie thousands of bodies interred here just below the surface, locked in time, but they don't always stay put. What do I mean by that? And why are they even here in the first place? Well, sit back, dim the lights, and allow me to share with you the dark history of Kingston, Ontario's Skeleton Park.
The playground of the dead.
During the first half of the 19th century, Kingston's citizens became intimately familiar with the lingering presence of death. Now, as a port town and a major trading center, Kingston saw all kinds of goods moving through the wharves on the waterfront. But the cargo wasn't the only thing passing from ship to shore. Disease in the form of cholera, malaria, typhus ravaged the local population. And with so little known about the way disease was actually transferred at the time, it extracted a high toll in human life. During successive outbreaks of disease, and particularly cholera, it created a macabre emergency. The need to bury many, many dead people. We're talking like dozens a week in some cases. And there was really only one place to do that, right here, in what was then known as the Upper Burial Grounds, Kingston's only cemetery. So things started out pretty organized. The various Christian denominations had their own place in the cemetery. The Anglicans over here, Catholics over here, Presbyterians back this way. But by about the mid-1800s, so many people had died so quickly and been buried here so urgently that the place was just full. There was no more room left. In some cases, they were even stacked 5 high. There were instances of mass graves, secret burials, unmarked graves, you name it. Just whatever had to happen, happened. And it happened pretty quickly and chaotically, and there were not a lot of records around to keep track of it all. So by the late 1800s, the place had fallen into pretty severe decline. The city had grown up around the cemetery and was now a neighborhood. A neighborhood that had a dilapidated, unused cemetery right in the middle of it. Inevitably, vandalism started to happen. Stones got knocked over, broken. People were secretly burying their own people. Farmers were letting their cattle graze here wantonly. It was just kind of a mess. Eventually, the neighborhood just had had enough. It pressured the city to do something about it. And what the city decided to do was build a park. And so the exhumation of the bodies by the various churches that had parishioners here began. They started digging up the bodies and attempting to move them to new cemeteries that had been built on the outskirts of town. Problem arose though, and basically has to do with the geography of Kingston. You see, Kingston is called the Limestone City for a reason. We dig easily available limestone that is only shallowly buried underneath the topsoil, and we make gorgeous gray buildings out of it. That's great for building, but for burying people, that can be a bit of a challenge because you couldn't always go the requisite 6 feet down here. The bedrock was so close in some cases that you had people literally popping out of the ground. And that's never good. And as well, that high bedrock means that The soil on top of it held a lot of water, which inhibited the decomposition process. So when they started digging up bodies, they were finding that they were in pretty disgusting states of half decomposition, even having been there for decades. So that was problematic. And as well, you got to remember, there's also concern that if we're going to dig up all these people who died of deadly diseases, well, what's going to happen to the people who live around here? There was perhaps legitimate concern at the time anyway about contamination. So they had a different idea. The city developed a very simple plan. Knock the stones over, pour dirt on top of them, and build your park on top. And that's just what they did. With the exception of this one monument right here, which is just too darn big to flatten or cover up. Now, the problem of digging up too many bodies in mass graves that are not well decomposed was only one of the problems that they encountered. Another one was that they were finding that often they would dig into a fully marked grave only to find an empty casket, or in some cases, nothing at all. Now, I can't offer you vampires and zombies here, but the truth is actually way more interesting. You see, Kingston has long been home to Queen's University and its much lauded medical school. And during the 19th century, a new and innovative way to teach medicine was to actually do live dissections. However, the laws of Canada prohibited the school from acquiring these bodies, which put them in a bit of a pickle. However, those concerned came up with a pretty good workaround. Medical students, wishing to be educated in the medical arts, would scamper over here to the park, which is on the dark side of town. Queens is on the south side, this park is on the north, so they're really on the rough side of the tracks. They'd sneak over here at night, they'd dig up bodies, take them back to the school, sell them to the school, and the school would then in turn use those bodies to educate the students who had provided them. Not a bad deal. I'd have to assume that everybody'd be happy. Students got paid, students got educated, and the school got to do its thing and keep its hands clean at the same time. In any event, the cunning plan appeared to work overall. McBurney Park, which wasn't originally called McBurney Park, it was called Frontenac Park, became a well-used and loved common area for the community, much like it is nowadays. This is a very well-attended park in the middle of the afternoon by the local kids, parents, and just about anybody. Now, here's a pretty common occurrence here in the park. What looks like a stone, this just happens to be naturally poking itself out of the ground there, is almost certainly a tombstone that has surfaced. The commonality of people finding stones and sometimes even bones poking out of the ground in the spring in this park is fairly well known. And back in the early 2000s, there was a survey done that determined that the current bounds of the park were actually smaller than the original bounds of the cemetery. Particularly, this street here was, at one time, about 20 years ago, 1 lane wider. But it was determined that there were actually bodies buried under the roadway, and it just seemed a little disrespectful to have that happening. So the city undertook a renovation and expanded the park, shrunk the street, and now nobody's driving around on dead people. So again, as I'd said earlier, records are spotty, but the rough estimation is that at its height, there were 10,000 people buried here. And they only managed to get about 1,000 of them out. So that means there's 9,000 of them here. Over time, the park has grown in terms of its neighborhood usages. It hosts a wonderful arts festival, happens yearly. All kinds of different community events are here, not the least of which is one that's coming up in a couple of days on Halloween. There is a gathering of the community here in the center of the park. They all gather around 5 o'clock. Local musicians conduct a parade, and then everybody breaks off and trick-or-treats the hell out of these houses. And I got a feel for any of these people, because if you don't have piles of candy and you have a house on the park, you're getting egged. But regardless of what's going on here at any given time, no matter how many people are in this park and no matter how big the event is, just remember, there's always way more just under your feet.
Hey, Editing Sean here.
Felt it prudent to mention that in my video about the spooky park that used to be a cemetery, that there has been talk of ghost activity in said park. No surprise there. I have a good excuse though for omitting that. I kind of got distracted by a couple of modern day goblins that were roaming around the park. I happened to be shooting about the time that the local public school got out. I got spotted. I was a guy with a camera and a funny hat, so no surprise there. Let's just say they were eager to engage. As charming and as fun as that was, I did get a little distracted and I forgot to say some stuff. The good news is that there doesn't seem to be too many examples of a specific ghost account in the park. More just a sense of its overall eeriness. Anyway, back to the guy with the hat. Thanks for coming today, guys. I appreciate it. And if you find value here, please think about subscribing, liking, commenting, all of that good stuff. You can buy me a coffee if you like. I'm sure I got a parking ticket as we speak. In any event, happy Halloween, and I will see you in a couple days because I'm going to cover that parade. Bye. So just in case you thought any of the ghosts are all in the past, I found a few wild ones right here.